Welcome to CIMA Managerial Level Lecture Series. Today's subject is Project and Relationship Management, and today's topic is Concept of Strategy and Development of Strategy. And today's lecture is lecture number 1, and my name is Vidya Rajavasan. So, start with, we have to see what is strategy. So, lot of people confuse with this, but let's see what is basically the strategy is. So, in understanding the strategy, it can be a quite difficult idea to grasp, but let's see what are the items that we need to consider in order to understand the strategy. So, the strategy defines a higher direction of an organization, where the organization has to move in to a future, and what will be the future is going to be and what action should be needed. Furthermore, strategy focuses on desired outcome of an organization's activities. Now, we are talking about a higher direction, and also it is talking about the organization's activities. Furthermore, strategy basically tells us how to move from a current state of activities to the state of desired objectives. So, CIMA definition of strategy is basically CIMA defined the strategy as a course of action, including the specification of resources required in order to achieve a specific objective, and furthermore, this also should include what is a strategic plan. A strategic plan is a statement of long-term goals with a definition of strategies and policies which will ensure the achievement of the goals that we have identified. So, the common themes of strategy, so there are certain themes that also we can discuss about the strategy. Those are basically the purpose and the direction is going to be long term, and the scope is based on organization's activities, and also it is going to meet the challenges of the external environment. Not only that, it has to have an effective use of internal resources and competencies, and finally, it has to create value for the stakeholders. So, let us look at strategy is also defined and expressed by many management theorists. So, Henry Mitzberg, basically he has come up with the 5 P's of strategy. So, let us understand as per Henry Mitzberg what are these 5 P's. One is basically the planning. A plan is basically a strategy as a plan. Basically, it gives a direction or a path to get from one place to another, or from here to a future position in the organization. That is the planning part. Then also it can be a pattern where we do certain activities consistently. Therefore, we can say that the consistent behavior over time through a logical activity pattern, we will be able to understand, like once we set our goals, certain activities has to be performed in a certain consistent manner, and also there has to be certain activity patterns. So, as a Mitzberg, what he is basically, it should have a plan, and also there has to be a pattern of activity which is going to be consistent throughout the organization. Plus, strategy can be a ploy where it can maneuver in a competitive business activity, because the people have to be basically organized, and in a way that how the people are going to support this activity, it is going to be we need to understand the competitive aspects of the business also. So, it is more like a ploy where you maneuver in a competitive business activity to achieve the future goals or future plans of the organization. And furthermore, he was talking about the position. Strategy as a position, basically it is going to place the organization in a particular market. For example, if we want to have a growth in the current market share that we are having, so how are we going to place our organization in that particular market? Or if we want to develop a new market, how the organization is going to be positioned in this new development market, that is again a part of the strategy. Then also finally, there has to be the perspective. So, perspective means how an organization views and solves business issues. So, there has to be certain perspectives which is basically valued by the everybody or most of the people in the organization. So, therefore, Henry Mitzberg 5 P's of strategy basically related to planning, and there has to be a pattern of work activity, it has to be consistent, there has to be a ploy for that, and also there has to be how do you position your strategy into the particular market, and also the perspective of an organization, that how it is view the organization, and also how the business is going to solve the business issues. So, those are the 5 P's of strategy as per Henry Mintzberg. So, this is basically Peter Drucker. So, he was asking fundamental questions related to strategy. So, what are the questions he is asking was basically he wanted to know what is the company's mission, and what are the company's plans, and who are the company's customers, what is valued by the company's customers, and also what are our results. After going through all this, the company results has to be successful, and also it should show growth. So, therefore, there are certain questions regarding the strategy where the Peter Drucker was addressed. Those are also important. Basically, he was talking about company's mission, and also based on the mission there has to be some plans, and most importantly the company should know who are the customers of the company, and also what is valued by the company. And ultimately, after going through this, you need to ask, when you review the plan of action, basically we need to ask what are the results of the company. Then there is another level that we need to check on, that is, there are 3 levels of strategy that we need to understand. So, the strategy basically occurs at various levels in the organization. So, particular levels are, or the categories of the or the levels can be categorized into corporate strategy, business strategy, and also functional or operational strategy. So, let us look at the corporate strategy. So, the corporate strategy basically focuses on determining the overall business purpose and the scope of the organization. So, the common issues related to corporate strategy are basically mergers and acquisition of businesses, setting up sales or closure of strategic business units, relationship with external stakeholders, decisions to enter into new markets, decisions to embrace new technologies, and also development of corporate policies. So, these are very wide strategies that has to be incorporated or identified and developed through the corporate strategy. Basically, these are at the very higher level, and also the most of the senior managers are responsible for these strategies. Then we can go into the next level. This is the business strategy. So, business strategy focuses on how the strategic business units approaches a specific market. So, the competitive strategies are basically formulated at this level. So, the common issues which can be identified at the business strategies related to product development, pricing, promotion, and distribution. Furthermore, we can also have segmentation of markets, and also finally we have to discuss about the decisions regarding specialization in profitable market segment, also a part of the strategy going to be the overall business strategy of the company. Then let us look at the functional or operational strategies. So, functional or operational strategies focuses on how to strategize main business functions, and basically the common issues that we need to deal with is related to formulation of long-term management policies for functional areas. Here we need to basically understand the long-term strategies, and also plans are basically formulated and developed by the senior management. And when it comes to the operational level, there are operational managers. Basically, they are the people who carry out the operational level strategies. So, basically what they need to do is they need to convert the long term strategies into functional operational strategies or functional operational activities, or planning has to be done in that area. And furthermore, when you look at the operational strategies, these strategies intended to ensure each functional area supports the SBU to achieve business strategies and also corporate strategies. So, basically at the functional level are the real activity which is going to take place. So, the functional strategies has to basically ensure that each functional area supports the SBUs or the organizations, business strategies and also corporate strategies. Then we have to look at the rational approach to strategy development. Strategy development or strategy formulation process is basically based on strategic planning. Then let us look at what is a strategic plan. A strategic plan is basically a statement of long term goals with definition of strategies and policies. Furthermore, it has to ensure the achievement of desired goals and objectives. So, here we are basically going into the new area, because we have basically understood about the strategy, and also there are different levels of strategy. In the previous slide we have discussed about the levels of strategies, which is starting from corporate strategy, business strategy and also functional strategies. Now, with all that we will basically have to go into, once we have done that, basically we have to go into the strategy development process. Development process, there are various approaches. One of the common approaches are the rational approach for the strategy development. So, before that basically we need to understand what is a strategic plan. So, because strategic planning, basically strategy development begins with the strategic planning. So, therefore, we need to understand what is a strategic plan. So, if you explain, or if somebody asks you, you will be able to explain. The strategic plan is basically a statement of long term goals with the definition of what are the strategies and policies which is going to be adopted in order to meet those goals, and also we need to ensure that the achievement of desired goals and objectives also has to be included. Furthermore, when you look at rational approach to strategy development, it is also known as a traditional model or formal model or top-down approach. So, the rational approach is based on the rational behavior, where the planners, management and the organization are expected to behave in a logical step-by-step manner. So, to summarize that, basically a rational approach for strategy development, basically known as the traditional or formal or top-down approach. Top-down approach means like the planning process starts at the very top level, and it is basically then it is pushed down to the managerial level and also the operational level. Basically, the rational approach based on a rational behavior. So, what is rational behavior is basically the whole management team is expected to behave in a logical and a step-by-step manner. So, that is the basis of the rational approach. Then this logical step-by-step approach, basically you will have to see what are the steps involved. One is the determination of mission of the organization. Then we need to set up the corporate objectives. Then once the corporate objectives are set up, we need to basically carry out a corporate appraisal, which is known as the SWOT analysis. And basically SWOT analysis analyze the internal and external environments and then come up with the strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats facing the organization. After, when you do the SWOT analysis, we moving into the generating strategic options. So, we need to follow this thing, because this is basically the logical approach or the step-by-step approach. So, there has to be a proper step-by-step logical sequence has to be followed through in order for this strategy development process. So, therefore, we need to start with the mission, determination of the mission of the organization. Then after that, we have to set up the corporate objectives. Then we move on to the corporate appraisal or the SWOT. Once the SWOT is complete, then we move into generating the strategic options. That part of the logical step-by-step process is completed. Then we will be moving on to evaluating the strategic options. Once you generate the strategic options, then you need to evaluate them. So, the selection of strategies to achieve competitive advantage, basically you need to be clear whether the strategies are basically going to achieve the competitive advantage, and also whether the strategies are going to exploit the opportunities in the market. Basically, strategies also should strengthen and minimize the threats and weaknesses to the organization. So, that is, when you evaluate the strategies, it has to basically improve the competitive position in the organization, or it has to strengthen the competitive advantage of the organization. Not only that, it has to exploit the opportunities which is in the external environment, and also there can be opportunities to exploit within the organization also, because there can be certain skills where the people are having. Those things has to be basically exploited, and in order to get the maximum out of the people. And not only that, the strategies should be aligned with the exploiting these opportunities within and internally and also externally. Not only that, strategies basically identify the strengths, and also it has to minimize the threats and weaknesses faced by the organization. So, once we have completed the evaluation of strategic options, then we can move on to the implementation of chosen strategies. Once the implementation is over, we will be basically reviewing and controlling what we have achieved. So, the reviewing performance to determine basically determine the achievement of goals and objectives, and once if there are deviations, then we need to basically take the corrective action. So, in order to explain what we have done, the logical step-by-step approach, basically we need to identify the mission and objectives of the organization. Once we have done, or once we have completed or finalized the missions and objectives of the organization, we can move on to the corporate appraisal. That is basically the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis has to be done by analyzing the internal appraisal and also the external environmental analysis. Basically, when it comes to internal appraisal, we need to see what are our strengths, and also we need to see what are our weaknesses. And when it comes to the environmental analysis, there are a lot of opportunities in the external environment. So, basically the strategy has to exploit those opportunities in the market. Not only that, there are threats also within the external market. So, those threats, basically the strategy has to minimize those threats, and also there can be weaknesses within the organization. That is, the internal appraisal will be identified by the weaknesses. So, the weaknesses basically should become the strength, and also if there are threats, external threats, the strategy should minimize those threats. So, once you have done the corporate appraisal, then we will be moving on to the option or the strategic strategic options generation procedure or the process. Once the strategic options are generated, then the next step should be the evaluation and also strategic choice. So, there can be several strategies. Basically, when we want to generate the options, there will be several strategies developed, but ultimately there has to be one or two strategies basically chosen through a proper evaluation. So, once a strategy is chosen, then it will be implemented in the organization. So once the strategy is implemented, basically there has to be review and control, and if there are deviations from the chosen strategy, then the corrective action has to be taken. With that, we have come to the end of the first part of our lecture. Let's go through some multiple choice questions and see how we have understood the important area of this particular subject. So the first question is, in strategic thinking, how long is the long term approximately mean? So the answer number 1 is, it can be a week or a month or week to a month. Answer number B is basically 1 to 12 months, or it can be 1 to 5 years, or it can be more than 5 years. And the last answer is none of these or any of these is not applicable. So let's see, the correct answer is it should be more than 5 years. So the second multiple choice question is, the goal of the organization's blank is to capture the hearts and minds of the employees, challenge them and evoke them, their emotions and also dreams. So what will be the correct word for that, whether it is going to be vision or whether it is mission, culture or strategy. So the correct answer is it has to be vision of the organization. Now let's move on to the next part of our lecture. Here we will be discussing about the vision, mission, goals and objectives of the organization. So we can start with vision. There has to be basically a vision statement to describe the vision of the organization. So therefore, what we should include in a vision statement, we can basically identify it in this slide. So basically what a vision statement does is, it describes the preferred future status, and also vision statement should describe the organization's values. Then furthermore, the vision statement should be concerned with the whole organization, not only part of the organization. And also the vision statement should resonate with both employees and those outside the organization. Furthermore, the vision statement should describe the purpose of the organization's existence, why we are here and where we want to go in the future, basically related to the mission statement. The mission statement is the next part of the, once we have defined the vision, we will be moving on to the mission statement. So then obviously there has to be a difference between a vision and a mission statement. So the mission statement basically should describe the purpose of the organization's existence. Then moving on, the mission statement should also provide the basis for consistent planning decisions. Furthermore, the mission statement should translate the purpose and the direction into objectives which can be assessed and controlled. So here, from the very broader perspective of vision statement, basically we are moving into objective setting and also controls with the mission statement. Furthermore, mission statement should inspire, support and ongoing commitment of the employees. So that's the mission statement. So basically from very broad perspective to, we are basically narrowing down to specific areas of the organization, and basically mission statement should provide the basis for consistent planning, because this is where mission, in order to achieve the vision, certain planning has to be achieved. So the planning process basically begins with the mission statement, and also it basically describes the purpose and organization's existence, why we are here. On top of that, we should translate the purpose and directions into objectives. So this is where we are getting very specific about what has to be achieved and how to achieve this, and also how to control the activities. So we are moving into the more planning level. And not only that, not only the planning we need to check, or consider here, but also a mission statement basically should inspire, support, and there has to be ongoing commitment also has to be generated with the mission statement. Then we move on to the goals. So now we are narrowing down the purpose of the organization, and basically these are again long term and short term goals can be there. So the goals, basically goals are the intentions behind the organization's decisions and also actions. Goals are more specific than vision and mission and have a shorter timelines. Now if you look at the vision, basically it may be running for more than 5-6 years, not only that, maybe for 10-15 years. So but when it comes to goals, maybe we are talking about a short period of time. We are going to be very specific, and also we will be focusing on short time periods. Furthermore, goals are not frequently achieved and there are difficulties in measuring them. So not like the objectives, there can be changes in the goals we are setting, and also depending on the certain changes, specifically the environmental changes, there is a possibility that the goals that we have set will not be achieved. There will be frequently changes in achievement of the goals, and also because of this frequent changes and also difficulties in achieving the goals, then there can be issues which are related to difficulties in measuring them. That's another part of the goals. And also goals does not have precise measures to measure the performance also. So those basically related to the goals, because we started with vision and then we discussed about the mission, then we move on to the goals level. So the goals are basically the intentions behind the organizations, but as you are aware, sometimes the intentions can change. The intentions can change due to changes in the external environment. So because of that, those changes, and also there can be a frequency of changes in the intentions. So therefore the goals, basically there is a difficulty in measuring the goals, and also putting or having performance measures related to measuring the goals also, there can be difficulties. Then we move on to the objective setting. So this is where the real planning takes place, or real operational level planning takes place. So let's look at what are the objectives. Objectives can be defined as the goals that can be measured. So the difference between all the statements that we have discussed earlier, vision, mission, goals and objectives, the objectives is basically we will be able to measure the objectives. That is a very significant important point. Furthermore, objectives basically corresponds with targets to be achieved. So here there is a specific target which is connected to the objectives. So that means the objectives basically can be achieved, and not only that, the achievement or the targets basically can be measured. So the measurement can be like the duration, or what is the timeline, and also what sort of resources basically we have used in order to achieve these objectives. Those things basically can be measured. Furthermore, objective sets the timeline for achieving desired intentions. Then finally, setting up objectives can follow the SMART criteria. So what is SMART criteria? It has to be basically specific, and it has to be measurable, and also the objectives has to be attainable. Without attaining anything, you will not be able to achieve something. Then the objectives has to be realistic, and finally the objectives has to be time bound. So if we cannot achieve the objective within a certain period of time, then the purpose of setting up that objective is also not worth. So let's move on to the corporate appraisal or the SWOT analysis. Basically this was discussed earlier as part of the logical approach to strategy development. So we will explain this further in this slide. Basically, the corporate appraisal provides the framework for internal and external analysis. So let's look at what are the internal analysis. What do you mean by this internal analysis? How we can understand this concept? Let's go through this in a detailed manner. So the internal analysis basically focuses on strengths and weaknesses of the organization. And when it comes to external analysis focuses on opportunities and threats faced by the organization. So then there are several analytical tools used in internal analysis. So what are these analytical tools? One is the resource audit, other one is Porter's value chain. Basically those are the internal analysis tools. Then also there are analytical tools related to external analysis, namely Pestel and also Porter's 5 forces. So let's look at the strategic options and evaluation. This is where the strategy is basically evaluated and also you choose a particular strategy. See, what happens is when it comes to strategic analysis, it provides basically the strategic options. So once the strategies or strategic options are generated, those strategies has to be evaluated. So the evaluation process focuses on identification and evaluation strategic options generated and finding alternative courses of action. So the strategic evaluation process leads to strategic choice and also strategic direction. When we are discussing about the strategic direction, this is a very good example. Here we can clearly see how the direction of the organization should go on. For example, if you look at the ends of matrix, here we are talking about market development, new product development, or it can be market penetration or diversification. So when you are evaluating strategic direction, this is a very good example. And furthermore, once you have evaluated your strategic decisions, then we come to the strategy implementation stage. Strategy implementation basically focuses on drawing up detailed plans, policies and programs necessary to make the strategy work. So they are commonly known as tactical and operational plans. Basically the tactical programs and decisions have medium term timelines related to basically developing new products, recruitment and also investment in new capacity. Furthermore, when it comes to operational programs or the operational decisions basically cover the day-to-day activities, meeting the production targets, cost and revenue targets, etc., etc. Then the final part is the review and control. So this is the last step in the rational approach to strategy development process. So this is a continuous process that needs to be reviewed continuously. Basically we need to ask certain questions. Does the performance of the strategy help the business to achieve the strategic objectives? And furthermore, we should be asking, are the forecast related to environment is still accurate, or there are any unforeseen opportunities and threats that have arisen subsequently. So we have come to the end of the second part of the lecture. Let's go through some multiple choice questions and see how we have learned this important part of the subject matter. So the first MCQ question is a firm's mission. So there are 4 answers. One is a statement of firm's business in which it intends to compete and the customers which it intends to serve. Mission is a internally focused affirmation of organization's financial, social and ethical goals. Answer number C is a firm's mission is mainly intended to emotionally inspire employees and other stakeholders. The final answer is a firm's mission is developed by a firm before the firm develops the vision. So the correct answer is basically it has to be point A, which is basically it's a statement of firm's business in which it intends to compete and the customers which it intends to serve. Basically, it has to be focusing on those areas. Right. Let's look at the second multiple choice question, which is basically discussing about the competitive rivalry. Competitive rivalry has the most effect of the firm's blank strategies than the firm's other strategies. So, we have to select the proper strategy or basically the proper form of action. So, the answers are given. One is the business level, other one is the corporate level, and C is the acquisition. There can be acquisition strategies and also there can be international strategies. So, the correct answer going to be what is related to competition within the external market. It's related to business level strategy. Now, we have come to the end of our lecture. This is our first lecture related to project and relationship management. I hope you have understood the important aspects of this lecture, since we have discussed about the strategy and strategy development process, and I will be going and doing another set of lectures related to project and relationship management, and thank you for today's participation.